intrepid traveler, and welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. I am the aforementioned Spooky Chris Ringler, author and podcasty guy, once in a while filmmaking guy, all-time weirdo guy. And this is my little podcast, little chunks of oddness that I bring to you, dear listener, though there's only one or two of you that exist. Maybe one day, when I'm abducted by space aliens and I'm famous, maybe these will blow up and become all the rage. That's my hope, at least, is we can all hope for aliens to come and make us famous. Because if not that, then what? So hey, my name's Chris Ringler. Hopefully you found my podcast at spookychris.com. That is my little home on the web. Home on the web. Where all my info, my blogs, my podcasts, my stories, all of that stuff is housed right there. As I said before, I'm an author, and all of my links to all my books are there. And all kinds of weirdness. So, geez, pardon my coughing. I have like a whole hamburger helper's worth of schmutz in my throat, seems like. So for this little episode of fun, I thought it would be kind of fun. So we're all in this coronavirus, COVID-19 kind of quarantine. Trying to be clever, doesn't work. Kind of quarantine. So I outside of work, I've been watching lots and lots of movies. It was funny, last year I had been unemployed for a while and then underemployed, and watched a whole kettle's worth of movies, and I'm definitely catching up now. But I've been watching lots of movies, and my preferred genre, as always, is horror. I just love horror movies. I mean, I love all kinds of movies, but horror movies, I just get a kick out of how they're put together. Like, there's many elements of them. I love the special effects. There's so much you can do in the storytelling, in the direction, in the lighting, in the sets, the acting. I get a kick out of all of that. And I think it's a shame that horror isn't better regarded, because I think it's harder to make a horror movie than to make a lot of other types of genres. And I think horror films really get the short shrift a lot of the time. You know, horror actors are never really looked at as being good, when it's not even in mediocre movies. It's not going to be easy to pretend to be frightened, to portray that you're being killed, to portray that you feel like you're being pursued by a killer, a zombie, a monster, a ghost. Like, compare that to having to play like, oh, well, you're an old dowager who is sad because her husband is dead, and you're, trying to hide your feelings. I mean, there's art to that, for sure, but that's something you can tap into. You can kind of tap into those feelings and that kind of mentality. But tapping into more primal things, kind of along the lines of, oh, so this giant monster is coming to eat you and your family, and you have to protect them even if it means you die. That's not something you just have in your head. Like, you kind of have to imagine it. And the thing too is horror films, like fantasy and sci-fi, is a lot of it you're acting to makeup or digital effects or green screens or what have you. Especially if it's a ghost, you're not going to necessarily see a ghost like a sheet. You're gonna maybe see. Oh, maybe someone will hold up, kind of like if you watch making of featurettes, maybe they'll hold up like a ball on a stick. Like, this is where the ghost is, and this is what you're acting to. But, if it's a ghost, you're not acting to anything. If it's Jason from Friday the 13th, you're acting against a guy in layers and layers of makeup who can't see you very well, and who is just trying to make sure that he doesn't trip or run into something because he can't see very well. And with depending on the era, but with Friday the 13th, Kane Hodder brought an element of the classical method in that he wanted them to be fearful of him. He didn't do things to be to make them to put them in danger, but he wanted to be menacing, and he wanted them to fear Jason. And I mean, really, that's kind of how you portray that fear. Otherwise, you're going to be portraying it like, oh my God, he's going to get me. You have to seem as if you're going to die. And when you get to the direction, my favorite director is John Carpenter. And, and with him, his favorite director is, John Ford. And a lot of folks, that's their favorite directors. Those kind of the classical directors. Well, a lot of that kind of thing is the scope. And Carpenter brought an appreciation of scope and score and lighting and how things were filmed. And what's funny is you get Hitchcock and all just tons of great filmmakers that have worked in dark thrillers or horror itself. And Carpenter brings the best of all of that because he shoots the heck out of his films and makes them horrifying through that. Like, he doesn't overshoot, and if you've watched many movies, there are directors and films where they overshoot, and it's because it's the filming, because and camera work, and the director kind of become the main character, where they're trying to be too cute, they're trying to be too clever, and frankly, a good movie where they do that is Natural Born Killers, with Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone was showing off all of his every trick in the book, and he and the camera and that was the main character, and that was the storytelling device. But it works for that because that's kind of that story is so. It's modern folklore. Mickey and Mallory are kind of a folk tale, and so it fits because he embraced different styles and different techniques and different formats, and so it fits. But in a lesser director's hands, that becomes super duper sloppy and obnoxious and a detriment. And Carpenter is as technically adept as he is. He doesn't really slam you in the face with it. It's interesting. Early Dario Argento films are similar. He started to get caught up in the tech, and then he kind of just his skills just kind of diminished altogether. But he did some amazing things with the way he shot things, the color palette he used, the techniques. They created lots of different types of cameras and rigs for his filming, and it's in that gray area where it's becoming a character, but it's his way of. His movies have this dreamlike quality. A lot of Italian kind of horror does. Lucio Fulci's does as well, but much more dreamlike and less rooted in logic. And Argento's are kind of dreamlike, but rooted kind of in myth almost, because a lot of them are passion plays and murder mysteries. And the earlier stuff, and get into those kind of like the notions of sexuality and duality and feminine and masculine and a lot of that stuff. And sexuality is a big part of his earlier stuff. So a kinetic camera makes sense and it fits. It doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work all the time, even for him. Some of his movies, it gets, like, you start to see kind of a change a little bit in Phenomena, just because, like, that score is so horrible. And I know people like it, but it's just obnoxious heavy metal from the time, and it's so it's too loud, too in your face, and it hampers otherwise really entertaining and interesting film. It's like driving next to someone in the summer, and you're just kind of doing your own thing, and they are blasting the most obnoxious music, and you are held hostage by that music for as long as you're there. And that's what moments in the movie feel like, as you're held hostage by that score. And, when you get into, the technique and the craft of horror, like I'm old school in that I like physical effects. I like makeup effects. I like I like that more than digital. I've come to appreciate digital because it can work well when it's working in concert with physical effects. That's the best marriage there is when you have the physical effects and then you just kind of enhance it with digital effects. You don't rely on one or t'other per se. And there's it drives me crazy. You see the Oscars and the movies that win the best makeup. It's some of an old age makeup on a character, and yet somebody did a whole series of monsters. Like how Star Wars wouldn't win that in these last few years, I don't know. Because they did amazing creature effects. I just don't get some of that. But they'll give it to somebody who oh gosh, they made Kate Blanchett look like she was 70 instead of 48. Oh my gosh, it's incredible. And it's funny too, just because some of those people are, the Dick Smiths, the Stan Winstons, the classic special effects people who you want to see win. But man, you'd like to see them win for something more interesting than an old age makeup. That's just a drag. And I get it. Gore effects are the ugly stepchild kind of in movies, and it's garish, and people are like, oh, gross. But if it's convincing, that's the thing, is that if it's enough to kind of make you go, oh, then it's convincing, and that tells you it's effective. And you can do it with just, having done cheapy special effects for my little movies, I get it. You can, a lot of it can be suggestion. And you can overdo it. You can overdo it, for sure. It depends on it's a partnership with the effects people and the director. Kind of make sure that you're capturing the right feel and not doing too much and ruining things. Kind of like putting too much salt in the recipe. So it's a partnership, but done well. It can haunt you, can horrify you, can disgust you. That's powerful. That's super powerful. And getting back to what I started with, I've been watching lots of horror films, and it's interesting. My friends and I have a film festival that we do, and we see lots and lots of short films leading up to things as we're trying to figure out what we want to show. And it's interesting seeing the different ways people in different parts of the world tell their stories. It's interesting seeing different techniques, different takes on vampires and zombies and ghosts and all that, and to see how different cultures view those. And it's really it is its own kind of film school, because you learn you can see different takes on kind of the same subjects and how they view them and how they show them, and it's fascinating. But it's interesting, all the movies I've seen, it's interesting to see, you'll catch the low budget ones and they'll get caught up in being super gory or being over the top or kind of shooting low kind of to get views. And it's a shame, because a lot of those things I've found in my limited experience making movies and, just in watching movies and seeing a lot of indie movies, it's one of those things like, if you write it well and if you write the characters well, people are willing to forgive a lot. We don't need to know if Jason goes to the bathroom. We don't need to know if Luke goes to the bathroom in Star Wars. We need to know what's happening, why it's happening, how it's happening, and what happens at the end. I've gotten to a point where I've seen enough movies where it's like, I just kind of roll my eyes when there's a shower scene and it shows the woman in the shower, because I'm like, I get it, she's in the shower. And it's so funny because they pad the movies almost, like they have to either put nudity in it or the insinuation of nudity, and pad the movie with this stuff, and it's needless because it's rare that that's part of the movie. Like, so for anyone, I assume most folks have seen Nightmare on Elm Street. There's a scene where Nancy's in the bathtub. Could have shown her naked, didn't have to, and he didn't. And the reason the scene's in there is because she's tired, she's falling asleep, and Freddy, it's a scene with Freddy. It's a great scene. It's a suggestive scene, but you don't get any overt nudity. He doesn't push the the sexiness of it, and that takes craft, frankly. In a lot of these indie movies and these low, but a lot of too many horror films, they get an actress that is willing to be naked because they don't feel like they have any options, or they're young enough to be like, I don't care. And they concoct nude scenes for them. I started watching one today, and within 5 minutes, the actress in a scene that doesn't really even connect to the rest of the movie necessarily, they had her, for some reason, it was a girl babysitting, and they don't show her take a shower. She goes in the bathroom, her hair's kind of wet, and she changes bras, and I don't know why, but they, minute-long scene of her topless, and it was like, what is this for? What does this serve? Where is this needed in the story? And if you really feel compelled to show them in the shower, you can show them without showing them. And it's not it's not like I'm a prude that's, oh my goodness, I don't want to see naked people. It's not that at all. It's just that why? The point of a horror film is to scare and to build tension, and what is that doing? And again, there's they a lot of times they'll have them in the shower and someone's sneaking up on them, and oh my gosh, what's happening? But it's funny that it's like listening to music, and we all know what Little Red Corvette's about. It's about a dude meeting a lady who's just down to get down, but he doesn't say it that way. You have to kind of unravel what the song's about, and there's a lot of music like that. And then there's music that's just about this girl likes to get down, and I like to get down, let's just get down. It's very blatant, and there's no craft to it, no art to it. And it can still be good music and still be a catchy song. It's just that some of the allure is gone, the mystery, as it were. It's, I guess, the idea of tease versus overtness, but it's just needless, and that's one of the things that kills horror movies, is just they have these things that don't have to be there. They'll have needless nudity, they'll have over-the-top violence by characters that they're so cruel, they're clownish. That was, honestly, that's kind of what Three from Hell became, is it's overly sexualized and overly cruel and violent. And it's but why? It's I get it, that's who those characters are, but we saw that in 2 movies. There's no growth in any capacity in Three from Hell. And it's I don't expect growth from Jason Voorhees, because he's, if you follow people, kind of describe him, he's a shark. Freddy's not a shark, but he's a predator. He's not going to grow as a person. But the Firefly family you'd like to see, and it stinks because there's teases that there could be growth in Baby, and they just kind of swat it away so they can get back down to like sex and gore and cursing, and it got old real fast. And it's funny too, because like I love some nasty gory movie. Like I love Serbian film as much as you can love that movie. It is nasty, it is gory, it is like sex, there's nudity, there's all kinds of everything. It is reprehensible. But the core of that has such a nihilistic, nasty message to it that humans don't give a crap about humans, and that we are all kind of product. And it's that's brutal. But it's brutal in a way that it works in that film. Again, I've seen it twice. I don't know that I need to, I can lead a happy life never seeing it again, but it's a powerful movie. So it's not as if I'm some prude. Because they stick, that's one of the things too, is horror movies have to have their own laws and their own logic. That's why Jason doesn't talk. Michael Myers doesn't talk. Freddy can kind of quip, but not. He's similar to the Joker in that his humor is cruel. There's no humor to it. The Candyman can be sexy is a weird term, but that kind of like alluring. The Universal Dracula kind of has the same thing. He has an allure. There's rules, and it just has to stick. You just have to stick to whatever your rules are, and keep it. There's a movie Haunt, which I freaking loved, and it's on Shudder, and it's a super simple, not much plot at all. A bunch of people who meet, and they go to a like a one night stand kind of a haunted house, and they get into trouble, and they set it up in a way, tons of tension, and there are gore moments, tons of tension. They give the actors, like, it's a terrible beginning. It's like it's super just like groaning, but they give the characters like moments. They slowly unravel the story so that there's more going on than you think, and it keeps unraveling. It has a great ending. Like, the tension is huge, and it's fantastically done. And it's like they did with that the best Rob Zombie movie I've seen in years. And they basically took his shtick, but they did it well, because that's the thing, is Rob Zombie is a heck of a director. He's like got a great eye, but he's just become a parody of himself. Even Carpenter, The Ward is actually pretty good. It's just got a terrible ending, which I think could have been done much more effectively. It's a really just cliche ending, but it's a good movie, and it has some Carpenter flair to it. But some of his later movies, like Vampires, loses its steam after the first half, and it's just not that interesting. And it's and his movies weren't bad, and then you get to Ghost of Mars. Again, it's interesting, but like the makeup for the main villain is terrible, and it's just, you wonder if his heart was really in those. After Mouth of Madness, it felt like he was going to taper off and lose interest. But I mean, shoot, even him losing interest still was doing good stuff. Cigarette Burns, which he did for Master of Horror, is great. It's absolutely great. But I listen to lots of horror podcasts, and you can learn a lot from that about storytelling and just the effectiveness of what works, what doesn't, how to describe scenes, how to portray things. I listen to a podcast called Let's Not Meet, which is true stories of like scary interactions. Like, I was at summer camp and there's this creepy guy that's in the woods, and it's like, that's fantastic. For kind of just setting tone, and like, it's they're not really written well per se, but like the imagery, and you can imagine these. I fell in love with these stories. They were it was on No Sleep. And it's like, I'm a search and rescue officer or something, and it's a series, and they are absolutely brilliant. It's like Knife Point Horror, which is a podcast. Those two, absolutely brilliant storytelling, and vivid, and they offer so much. And if you want to tell stories, those are what you need. And if you have a great story, everything else works. I'm working on something for a book that I'm going to put out next year, and it's kind of a take on Frankensteinian kind of that resurrection thing. And I'm working through it, and there's logic gaps, but I'm like, I have the characters acknowledge that there's logic gaps, and I move on. Because until I make it a big deal, it's not a big deal. Most of us, if you keep that your own internal logic, things work. You can have a car racing movie and then have them start the car as if it was a motorcycle, which is ridiculous. But I mean, you get what I'm saying. There's certain things that have to be maintained. But I mean, Star Wars is full of space inaccuracies, like spaceships make sound in space and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter because you're in it for the story and for the spectacle. And we as viewers are willing to forgive a ton if you stick to your logic. I watched a couple of really good Asian found footage movies. Noroi, The Curse, I watched today, and then I watched another one called I forget how it's pronounced, but it's The Haunted Asylum. And both are good. Both have their issues, but they're both good. And Noroi really plays with the idea of it's similar in kind of technique to oh my gosh, I can't think of it. Oh, shame on me. It's one of my favorites. I'm trying to think. But it's similar to a really kind of, it's gaining in popularity about a young girl who disappears, and her family are kind of trying to come to terms with her disappearance, and then the truth of that disappearance. And it's similar in that, like, this is portrayed through footage it's from a documentary this guy was making, and then it's all of his footage together to kind of tell that story, and it was interesting. And there's not a lot of special effects, there's not that kind of stuff. It's creepy, and it's the little glimpses, and that's what's funny is horror can do that. Is the little, you can. I mean, shucks. Look at Blair Witch Project. You never see the witch once. It's all in sound design. It's in suggestion, and it's in building this expectation and what we think is going to happen and what we expect to see. And that's what matters, and that scares the heck out of you. And it's funny, like I say, it's funny that horror gets kind of a bum rap. And I get it. It's heavy stuff. Those aren't usually fun movies. People are dying inherently or being tormented or scared or whatever, and that's not the most enjoyable thing, especially this time of our history. It's not the most enjoyable thing. But it's a shame that the art of these horror films, is so shrugged off, because there's a lot of trash, and I watch a lot of it. There's a lot of trash out there, but in it, even in some of the worst ones, there's moments, and that's what us, fans, that's what we look for, and that's what we kind of latch onto are these moments, and there's a lot of them out there. And for people like me, I eat the stuff up. That's why I say I listen to the podcasts, like story podcasts. I listen to True Story podcasts with the Let's Not Meet. I read horror. I watch horror movies, so I kind of eat the stuff up. But it's interesting too, because you kind of get a feel for what works and what doesn't. And I'm not gonna ever say that I can write a scary story, but I understand the elements that make something work. And I would offer a friend, as I've watched a lot of movies lately, like I say, it's interesting to see what works, what doesn't, and how a movie like Crawl is super effective because of the acting and because you are invested in the characters. Like, it's a scary scenario, but it's it's kind of Jaws-ish. And then shoot, Jaws alone, that works because of the acting. because Jaws is just it's a monster. It's a monster movie, and it has no personality. It just kills. So you rely on the actors, and it comes through because of the actors, and because you care about them. You know, that's the power of these kind of movies. So that's what I've been watching, friend. What are you watching these days? What are you doing to kind of keep sane and keep your mind occupied? As always, I am Spooky Chris Ringler. This is my weird little podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be back sooner than later. You take care, you stay safe, and I will talk to you soon, my friend.